From Brandeis University, welcome to Recall This Book, where we assemble scholars and writers from different disciplines to make sense of contemporary issues, problems, and events. I'm John Plotz, and my guest today is the brilliant comic novelist, author of Object of My Affection, Insignificant Others, and most recently, My Ex-Life. My colleague Steve McCauley joining us on RTB for the second time. So this is another installment of our Books in Dark Times series. It's actually the conversation that inspired the whole series, which, as you probably by now know, takes its starting point in Hannah Arendt's Men in Dark Times, which proposes that, quote, even in the darkest of times, we have the right to expect some illumination, and such illumination may well come less from theories and concepts than from the uncertain, flickering, and often weak light that some men and women in their lives and their works, and we'll say here, and in their books, will kindle under almost all circumstances and shed over the time span that was given them on Earth. So at this dark moment, we really want to know what brings people like Steve, and also like you, dear listener, comfort or joy. So draw up a chair and listen, and then send us your own thoughts about books for comfort or for joy at this moment. So Steve, you said the idea for this conversation, which I think is a great way to organize it, is like what you're reading now that gives you comfort or gives you joy. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think you should talk to a bunch of people and find out what they're reading.
I should.
Yeah.
But you are a bunch of people. You contain multitudes. So
yeah. Well, for me, I mean, because okay, like, to be honest, I guess it was about a week ago, I was kind of going about living my normal life, and then it suddenly hit me that, like, something was happening that was very concerning, and it was going to disrupt the flow of what I was expecting my months ahead or weeks ahead anyway would look like. And I've been extremely anxious since. And so, what I've been trying to do is just think about, like, well, what is there in this period of isolation and anxiety, and when that I can do that is different from what I would ordinarily do that might give me some pleasure. And earlier in the winter, I began reading Little Dorrit, and I'm not even sure why I began reading Little Dorrit, but I honestly thought that I had lost my ability to read Dickens because it requires a certain kind of patience and care in reading it. And so I was just so thrilled.
Wait, Steve, can you say more about that? Because I think of Dickens as so, delightfully verbose and sort of bumbling. So I sort of think of him as like watching a show where you always know there's going to be another episode where you can catch up. So you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't feel like reading, poetry by W.S. Merwin or something, where I'm hanging on every word. Exactly.
But it doesn't feel like reading Trollope either, which is very straightforward.
Right.
And so while Dickens is, is kind of the ultimate in accessibility in many respects, at the same time, as you point out, it is verbose, and it just requires a different, to me, the real pleasure of Dickens, despite these elaborate plots and despite all of that, that's not the pleasure of reading Dickens. For me, the pleasure is really sentence to sentence, and the elaborate descriptions and these brilliant characters that keep recurring with their very predictable traits, that continue on through 800 pages. And so in that respect, I don't know, I worried that I was not going to be able to read Dickens anymore because I don't have the concentration and attention span and so on. And I was so thrilled. And it was like the best reading experience that I've had, probably in like 2 years was reading.
Yeah. That's great. So do you think this is a moment where suddenly we actually want more of our bandwidth to be filled when we read? Because that sort of resonates with my experience reading Wolf Hall, which I know, I don't think you're a fan of hers, actually. Are you? Or
I haven't read her, so
you haven't. I get. Yeah.
I just understand
that you're too good for certain of my pleasures, but Wolf Hall is one of my real pleasures, and it's like, and I thought that I was going to be yeah, I thought it was going to be too thick for me, basically. And instead, I feel like the thickness of it is exactly what I want. Like, I want to be stuck inside a paragraph that I know I have to attend to really carefully, because if I don't
Uh-huh.
attend to it carefully, then who he is in this paragraph is going to elude me. Um,
Right.
yeah.
So you want that forced concentration.
Yeah. Like, I don't normally necessarily want to work when I'm reading, but at this moment, I really do.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I mean,
And
I find I think that I'm both, especially distracted right now because
yeah,
of everything that's going on,
yeah,
and also especially eager to escape those distractions
yeah,
because
right,
I don't really want to watch yet another video of someone talking about their early symptoms of
right.
coronavirus.
Oh my God,
Um,
Steve, wow, you're so much more serious than like the video that I watched this morning was the two penguins in the Chicago Zoo that got to explore the aquarium. I mean, in the aquarium. I was like,
yeah.
oh, that's so awesome. Lucky penguins, you know?
Well, see,
Um,
you're having a better, COVID-19
no, I'm just
experience
fiddling.
than
I'm
I
just
am.
fiddling while the entire freaking world burns, but I
Yeah,
enjoy I'm fiddling with penguins.
yeah. Well, I'm
Um,
not sure that, like sinking into, because now I'm reading The Last Chronicle of Barset, and
oh,
which I haven't read before, although I've tried to read it before.
yeah.
I'm finding that it's just giving me some of that same pleasure of
Oh,
like
dude.
leaving a world
Oh,
that I
dude.
don't particularly want to be in at this moment
Oh, yeah.
and entering a completely, and I think what it is that these worlds are so fully realized, by
Yeah.
the writers and imagined in such a thorough way that you really do feel as if you're entering into a different um, sphere of experience almost.
Yeah, but that one is so amazing because the structure of it. Wait, how far into it are you? It,
Not very, I mean, yeah.
but have you gotten to the check yet? Or
Oh yeah,
yeah, okay.
that's
So,
actually the first
I
page.
mean, oh, okay, good. So the structure of it, just for people who haven't read it lately, it's all about somebody who seems to have forged a check or passed a bad check, and
Right,
did he or didn't he? You know,
right.
who
And the
was
consequences
involved,
of
like,
all
is
that.
there a cover up? Like, that actually creates this element of serious sort of procedural suspense throughout. So
Right.
it's kind of weird because you're vibrating with the plot at the same time as, I totally agree with you, you're immersed in the delights of that world. But yeah, I mean, it's so masterful because the the kind of, I was going to say dialectic, but at least the kind of back and forth between the kind of the real anxiety around, oh my God, is he going to jail,
Yeah.
versus the quality of discovery of this world. It somehow keeps you in both places at once.
Yeah, well, I mean, Little Dorrit, like most of the novel, probably in terms of page length, page numbers, it takes place in debtor's prison in
Yeah,
a very unfortunate situation,
yeah,
but nonetheless, it's so wonderfully immersive that
yeah.
that's what I came away with,
Yeah.
really.
Okay. So Little Dorrit has been amazingly satisfying to you. What else? What other sorts of books do you think provide similar?
Well, I just reviewed this book for the Times Book Review that I can't
Yeah.
mention because it probably won't come out for a couple of months, and they
Mm,
hate it if you say anything.
mm,
But I think we might agree that it is a comic novel
mm.
in a way. And it's very delightful and it's very well written and it's very well done. And as this particular moment kind of got deeper and more serious, I found myself thinking, oh, these characters don't know what's about to hit them, sort of, even
Right.
though, of course, it wasn't. And even though I found that admirably distracting and uplifting in many ways because it takes place in our world right now,
Yeah.
of this kind of, 2020 for all I know,
Yeah.
that it just didn't have the same feeling of satisfaction for me
Oh, that's really
of
interesting.
really
Yeah.
taking me out of
Well, so I was
to a
actually going to
different
ask you
place.
that about like older books. I mean, Dangerous Liaisons. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I read Moby Dick this summer and completely loved it. So do you
Uh-huh.
find Do you find going way back
Yeah, I
offers?
mean that's what I'm finding right now. And I
Yeah.
think that, really for the past couple of years, just because related to meeting a lot of writers on book tour and wanting to read their work, I've been mostly reading contemporary
Yeah.
novels. And
Yeah.
so it's been nice to have this experience of just, going back a little bit. I'm also reading right now Brideshead Revisited, which is a different kind of thing because I feel like, you know, it, reading it is almost like nostalgia for that
Oh.
period of my life when the
Oh yeah.
Masterpiece Theater thing was on
Oh my
TV.
God. Oh, you really, I really want to read it now because I was going to ask you about PG Woodhouse actually, but
I
Wall,
can't get into him. I've never been able
really?
to read. I've never been able to read
No.
him. And some friends of
Really?
mine are saying, you've got to read him. He's brilliant. And
He's
I,
totally brilliant.
I know
Yeah.
he's brilliant, but there's just something. I think maybe I've read the only thing I've tried are the Jeeves novels, and
Yeah.
there's something about that whole class satire that it just doesn't interest me somehow.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Wow. No, no, it's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
I get it. You're yeah.
There's another series that my friends said, you should read those. Do you know which one that is? It's
The Lucian Map books.
no, no,
Oh,
no.
you
Oh,
mean in
those. I
Woodhouse?
love those. I love those.
You
I
do?
love those.
Oh my
Oh my
God. And
God, are
yet
you
you don't
kidding?
like Woodhouse? Dude, I think Woodhouse is like 10 times better. I love it. But you're having an
Really?
adverse reaction to it. So you like the Bensonhurst book. So what's his name?
Well, okay.
Yeah.
E.F. Benson. E.F.
Benson.
Benson.
Benson. E.F. Benson. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, so there's something very arch and ironic and campy about those
Yes.
books. I
They're
mean, and
very
dare I
campy.
say that
Yeah.
one not be surprised to find out that E.F. Benson was homosexual.
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah.
wasn't surprised to hear it as a gay
No.
person. And maybe there's something in that sensibility that I'm connecting with a little
Yeah.
bit more than the Woodhouse one,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is a little
Yeah.
more,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not frat boy. I don't mean that, but there's a little bit more of that, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's inside the beltway of that kind of English ruling class, I guess. So I do feel like it's always, I mean, it's more than just a pinprick that he's using to bring them down. I mean, I feel
Yeah.
like it is genuinely satirical rather than just kind of, it's not just, it's not just gently ribbing those characters. It is actually kind of
Yeah.
dissecting them. But
No, but
I know,
I don't mean to like to say anything against him because I honestly feel as if I haven't read enough to even have an opinion. All I can say is that, I've tried a couple of novels, I don't even remember which ones,
yeah,
and I wasn't that engaged by the humor or um, by the milieu. So
yeah,
um,
yeah.
anyway,
Hey, if we're talking about, I'm just looking around at my books as we're talking.
yeah.
We've talked about Ronald Furbank, so I'm going to pass on Ronald Furbank. But
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about Christina Stead.
Oh,
What do you think of her?
um,
Because
difficult genius.
yeah, House of All Nations, I actually like much more than The Man Who Loved Children.
Really? I should try
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. I find The Man Who Loved Children just, I mean, Difficult Genius is fair, but also there's an element of kind of um, sort of shardy, jagged chilliness that
Yes. Cold.
reminds me of Joan Didion in ways that I
Mhm.
sort of respect Didion, but I can't really stick with her.
Right.
So, yeah.
I can stick with Didion,
You
but
can. I can mostly stick with Didion. You know what happened with Didion is I think she's great. I just kind of overdosed on her because I read them all at once.
yeah. Oh,
But
wow. That's very challenging.
well, I dived into her and I was so in love. I think it was when I was living out in San Francisco right out of college and I dived into Slouching Towards Bethlehem and just
Uh-huh.
thought, oh, Jesus, this woman is just an insane genius.
Yeah,
And then
amazing.
Democracy, I thought was really great.
I love Democracy.
Isn't
Yeah.
it great?
I love that novel. I mean,
Yeah.
there are just so many scenes and passages from that just have, stayed with me, and I pull it off the shelf every once in a while and read
Oh, I should really
chapters.
go back to that. Okay, good. I'm writing. Okay, Waugh and Didion. You totally persuaded me.
But
Yeah.
I taught Play It As It Lays once.
Yeah.
And I think that was a mistake, you know.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like students were very put off by it, and there's something about the passivity of that character that
Yeah,
is problematic, I think, in the current state of affairs,
I
in the
see.
world
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
really was not, people were not connecting with. So,
That's really
and
interesting.
in fact, I think, if I had really thought it through, I probably wouldn't have
Well,
assembled it.
you like, I think that one of the types of novel that you like that I really appreciate you've opened my eyes to, like an example would be that is it called Cassandra at the Wedding? The Dorothy Baker, is that her name?
Oh yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
that's an amazing
it's an
novel.
amazing book. But I feel like what you like is people who you have a taste for novels where people find themselves in a really rough situation, but it's not a situation that can just be kind of adventured out of, like you can't just solve it. I have sort of a sweet spot for, I don't know, almost a kind of Robert Louis Stevenson or Joseph Conrad plot where, I
Oh
mean, it
yeah.
might be messy or awful, but like there's something that can happen that can change things. But I think
Right.
you really like novels where people just find themselves, at the, what do they call that with a clutch? Like at the contact point where it's just kind of,
Uh-huh.
just
Like you
stay
can't,
there.
even suicide won't solve your
Yeah,
problems.
exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Like
And
that
Cassandra's the
really
way.
amazing novel you just recommended to me about the woman with the impossible French boyfriend.
Oh, after Claude?
Yeah, After Claude, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just like,
she has to join a cult, and even that doesn't help her out.
right, right.
She gets abandoned. She gets abandoned by the cult even,
Forgot that.
That's how bad it is.
Yeah, but there's something that about like you need to kind of fetishistically invent an escape, and even that escape won't do it because you're still stuck with yourself.
Right.
Okay, Patricia Highsmith, any comfort
Yes.
there?
In reading her in this moment,
Yeah.
hmm, I always think of her as being, her characters are so dastardly and
Yes.
somehow pathetic at the same
Yes.
time,
They
um,
are. That's
which I guess,
such a good point.
which
Like
I
you would
guess
think
is
if you
kind
were
of.
going to be that, yeah.
Go
Go ahead.
ahead.
Well, you'd think if you were going to be that dastardly, at least you shouldn't be pathetic. Like at least you should get the pleasure of being like at least you should get the pointy mustache and the cape and the
Right.
little cigarette case. But no, they managed to be dastardly and yet consumed by sordid misery at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes them so much more interesting.
Yeah.
Because I went to a reading the other day of someone who was sort of writing in what sounds like, I haven't read it, but it sounds like an updated um, um, Ripley,
Uh-huh.
kind of situation. But it sounds like there was just so much self-awareness on the part of the character, the
Right.
ostensible Ripley character, that it made it a little less interesting.
Right.
Um,
Yeah,
I felt like in the movie, the Matt Damon Ripley movie,
mhm.
that once the sexuality came to the surface and it was
Yeah.
acknowledged, to me the whole thing kind of fell apart because it just was not that, it was no longer that interesting or that comprehensible in a way
Hmm.
to me, that it's almost needs to be submerged and twisted and tormented and all of that, to really be effective. So
Huh. That's interesting because I remember actually really enjoying that movie. It's been a while since I saw it, but I thought because
great scenery.
I just thought it was jealous. I thought what it brought out was this mixture, like how much jealousy is involved in desire anyway,
Yeah.
even I mean, I get your point about the notion of the unspeakable or the unsayable as being what powers things, but I feel like, yeah, there's something about the element of aggression or hostility that can be in a lot of forms of desire or romantic attachment, um,
Hmm.
or friendship, even, I guess.
Yeah.
She's
I
just
just feel
so,
like it's sort of like, it has more power in a way when it's kind of it's like the that hurricane before it hits land or something.
yeah,
churning up all that water out there, and
Right.
sucking it up into the cyclone, and then
Right. Right. I
anyway,
get
that's,
that. Yeah. But
yeah.
I also, but what can I say? I'm like a Victorian novel person. I kind of like this. I kind of like novels where ultimately everything gets surfaced and then you play with the implications. Like,
Right.
one of the things I love about Middlemarch is like, oh, looks like Dorothea is heading into a terrible marriage. Like, could she really marry that old guy, Casaubon? Oh, it's page 43 and she did. Let's see what happens. Like it, I really appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, like, you could, I don't know, you can spend a lot of time like guessing at the hovering, coy silences. And then sometimes it becomes really interesting to just head into the storm and see what happens after the
Yeah.
silence is spoken. All right. So, Steve, a final word, a recommendation for another novel that you haven't gone back to for a while, but you think is amazing and you want to get back to.
You know what? I'm thinking about rereading The Eye of the Storm by Patrick White.
Oh,
And
interesting.
Patrick White is. Have you ever read him?
I have tried to read him like a kangaroo. I think I couldn't get into it. Yeah.
Kangaroo.
Isn't that right? Do
That's
I?
D.H. Lawrence.
Oh, okay. Well, hang on. I'm going to look up the actual
Um,
name. But sorry, I have never been able to get into Patrick Wright. So tell me. Yeah.
okay. Well, I think The Eye of the Storm for me is the best one, and it's the one to read. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
think he's such an interesting writer, and there's something about the slow way that novel evolves and the structure of it with this, this long scene smack in the middle of the novel in
Uh,
which the main character is caught in the eye of the storm and the revelations and it's
uh.
really
Wait.
powerful and beautiful
Are,
and very funny in a nasty way.
well, Steve, thank you so much. This is
Thanks,
a
Sean.
really hilarious and excellent conversation. I truly appreciate it. Thank you for listening to another episode of Recall This Book. Recall This Book is hosted by John Plotz and Elizabeth Ferry with music by Eric Chaslow and Barbara Cassidy. Sound editing is by Claire Ogden, website design and social media by Kaliska Ross. We always want to hear from you with your comments, criticisms, or suggestions for future episodes. We would love to hear your thoughts about books to console you during this time. And finally, if you enjoyed today's show, please be sure to write a review or rate us on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcast. You may well be interested in our earlier conversation about the comic novel with Steve McCauley, and as well as in-focus conversations with writers such as Zadie Smith, Samuel Delaney, and the filmmaker Mike Lee. So from all of us here at Recall This Book, thanks for listening.